Most people use a sample database just to practice basic SQL, but they completely missed what makes it powerful. In this video, I'll show you how to use the Chinook database for real data analysis, including finding how much customers spend per transaction and seeing trends over time. By the end, you'll know how to turn simple SQL queries into insights you can actually use. And if you want to follow along, grab my free Chinook data analysis guide. It includes the ERD, documentation, and all the queries from this video. The link is in the description. Let's start by taking a look at what's in the invoice table. This query just shows us the first few rows of the table. This is a handy little trick when you're exploring a table for the first time. You get to see all of the columns and only a few rows, and you avoid running a massive query and getting a lot of data by mistake. You'll see columns like invoice ID, customer ID, invoice date, and total. The key column here is total, which represents the total amount the customer spent on that invoice. There's also a relationship between invoice and invoice line. Each invoice can have many invoice lines, which means one invoice line per track that was purchased. This is common in many online stores. So the total column on the invoice is effectively the sum of all the line items for that invoice. If you want to verify that, you could write a query to compare totals between the two tables. We run this query and see the results. We add in the invoice total, then run the query. This confirms that the total on the invoice matches the sum of its line items. It's good practice to check that the data you're analysing makes sense before you start summarising it. Now let's find the average amount customers spend per invoice. To do this, we write a select query with a simple average function on the invoice table. This query calculates the average of all invoice totals in the database. It gives us a single number, which is a quick summary of the overall spending behaviour. The number is 5.6519 and many more decimal places. If the result seems low, remember that this is a digital music store. Most invoices might just include a few songs or a simple album. And if you think that a digital music store doesn't make sense, given we have Spotify and Apple Music these days, then you're right. Maybe I'm just showing my age as someone who used to use iTunes. Back to the SQL. We can see the result has a few decimals. Let's make it a little more readable by rounding the result. We can use the round function, which should work in all SQL vendors. That's better. Now you'll see the average spend per invoice rounded to 2 decimal places, which is 5.65 in this example. So at this point, we've got a general idea of customer spending. We can tell that customers spend on average $5.65 on an order, but averages alone don't tell the full story. We might have some very small purchases and some very large ones, and that's what we'll look at next. Let's calculate the minimum and maximum invoice totals to see the range of spending. We can run both a min and max function on this table. This gives us two numbers, 0.99 as the min and 25.86 as the max. This shows the smallest amount a customer has ever spent on a purchase and the largest. The smallest invoice is around 0.99, which probably means a single song. The largest is 25, so that might represent a bulk purchase or an album collection. This kind of check helps you understand the distribution of your data. When analysing spending, you always want to know if your data is heavily skewed by large outliers. If you're curious, you can even find out which specific invoice those are. To find the invoices with the highest spend, we select from the invoice table. We filter on those rows where the total is equal to the maximum. We need to use a subquery here because we need to find the max in the entire table and then use that max as a filter in the outer query. We run this and see the result. That will show you the invoice with the highest spend, including the customer and the billing country. You can also do the same for the smallest one by swapping the max function for the min function. This approach makes your analysis more tangible. You can connect the real numbers in the data to the invoices. We've seen the overall average, minimum, and maximum. Now let's see how spending changes over time. Maybe customers spend more in certain months, or perhaps the average amount has grown over the years. We can extract the year and month from the invoice date column and group the data. Now, the exact function you use will be different in each vendor. Essentially, you want to use some kind of extraction or conversion function to provide the invoice date and return the month, and repeat it for the year. We need it in 2 columns because we don't want to combine all January orders for all years. We want to separate it out for each year. We can run this query and see our results. This query returns one row per month and year, showing the average spend for that period. We don't have the average spend, so let's add that to our query. We can now see the average spend per period. It's a great way to visualize trends or check if there are seasonal changes. If you plot this data in Excel or a BI tool, you can easily see trends over time. Finally, let's extend the analysis to individual customers. We can select the customer ID and the average of the invoice spend, rounded to 2 decimal places. We group by the customer ID to only show one record per customer. Then we order the data by the average spend in descending order. This helps you find out which customers spend the most on average. This query gives you a ranked list of customers from highest average spender to lowest. We run this and see our results. If you join this with the customer table, you can see their names and locations. We'll do this now. We add the customer table, then we add in the first name and last name, which we have concatenated here into a single field. We add in the country, then we add these to the group by clause. This is the kind of analysis businesses use to identify VIP customers or frequent buyers. We run this and see our results, which show more details of the customers with the highest spends. If you want to explore this data for yourself, grab my Chinook Data Analysis Guide. It includes the EID, documentation, and all of the SQL queries from this video and other videos, so you can follow along step by step. You'll find the download link in the description below. It's a perfect companion if you're learning SQL and want to practice on a realistic dataset. Now that you've looked into some of the basics of analysing averages and groups of invoices, you'll want to watch this video next to find the top customers using this same Chinook database. Thanks for watching.